Welcome to the deep dive. You handed us a real gem this time, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Oh, yeah.
We've got excerpts from the book itself and a PDF version, too.
Nice.
So are you ready to cut through the noise and figure out what really matters according to Manson?
Let's do it.
Let's dive in.
I think what's really interesting about this book is how, he doesn't sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
He's not giving us those typical self-help platitudes, like just think positive and ignore your problems.
Right.
Instead, he kind of throws down a gauntlet right from the start
Okay.
and says, you actually have to give a fuck.
Not what you'd expect from a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Right.
So how do we navigate this? How do we decide what to care about and what to let go of?
Well, that's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Manson says it all comes down to choosing your values.
Okay.
And he uses this great analogy of Charles Bukowski, the poet, to illustrate this.
Oh, interesting.
Bukowski was notorious for his lifestyle, drinking, gambling, all that.
Yeah. Hard living.
But he cared deeply about his writing, like enough to starve for it.
Wow.
And that dedication paid off.
So maybe it's not about being indifferent, but being selective with our energy.
Exactly.
Not sweating the small stuff so we can pour our hearts into what matters.
Yeah, Manson says a lot of us chase the wrong things.
Like what?
External validation, superficial achievements, fleeting pleasures.
Yeah, I see that.
And this leads to what he calls the feedback loop from hell.
Uh-oh, what's that?
It's where we worry about our problems,
Okay.
then we worry about worrying,
Oh, I know that loop.
and so on.
It's like when you can't sleep because you're stressed about a work deadline,
Yeah,
and then you start stressing about not getting enough sleep,
exactly.
which makes it even harder to fall asleep.
That's the loop.
Vicious cycle.
And that's where the disappointment panda comes in.
Disappointment panda.
Yes. Imagine a grumpy panda, right, showing up
Yeah, bye.
and saying, hey, guess what? Life is going to disappoint you. It's full of problems. Get used to it.
So not pretending everything is sunshine and rainbows,
Right.
but acknowledging that challenges are just part of life.
Yeah, but how do we escape that worry spiral then?
Yeah, good question.
The key is to find good problems to solve.
What does that even mean?
Problems that align with those values we talked about.
Okay.
It's about choosing what pain you're willing to endure,
Choosing your pain.
the challenges that matter to you.
I think I'm starting to see the connection here.
Yeah.
It's not about avoiding discomfort altogether,
Right.
but about the kind of discomfort that leads to growth,
Exactly. To illustrate this, Manson tells a story about Dave Mustaine, the musician.
Oh, I know him.
He was kicked out of Metallica, his band, right before they hit it big.
Ouch, talk about a problem.
Right?
Getting rejected is never easy,
No?
but to have it happen right before your former bandmates achieve massive success, that's gotta sting.
It does, but instead of letting that rejection define him,
Yeah.
Mustaine channeled that anger into forming another band, Megadeth.
Oh, yeah, they're huge, too.
Hugely successful.
Okay, so he took that rejection, that bad problem,
Yeah,
and turned it into a good problem.
he did.
The challenge of proving himself, building something new.
Exactly.
But did he find happiness? Manson seems to suggest there's more to it than just achievements.
That's the question, is it?
Yeah, like he achieved outward success, but was he internally stuck?
It's possible.
Still driven by that old wound?
Could be.
This brings up a big question. How do we know if we're valuing the right things?
That is the question.
How do we avoid chasing empty goals?
This is where Manson gets really good.
Okay.
He gives us a framework for evaluating our values.
Okay, lay it on me.
He says good values should be grounded in reality,
Okay.
contribute to something bigger than ourselves,
I like that.
and be within our control.
Okay, that makes sense.
So being popular wouldn't really be a good value.
Right, because it relies on other people.
Things we can't control.
Exactly.
To illustrate this, he contrasts Mustaine's story with another musician,
Who? Pete Best.
the Beatles drummer.
The original drummer.
Right, before Ringo.
So he was fired right before they blew up.
Wow, talk about bad timing.
But here's the thing.
What?
Best later found happiness by focusing on family and a simpler life.
Interesting.
He redefined success.
Meanwhile, the Beatles struggled with the downsides of fame for decades.
It's true.
Wow, that contrast really highlights how our values shape our reality.
Don't they?
It's not about outward achievements.
No.
It's about how those achievements align with our values
Exactly.
and contribute to our well-being.
And Manson takes this even further.
How so?
He says we're responsible for our lives even when terrible things happen.
So it's not about pretending bad things don't happen.
Right.
We're not immune to suffering.
We're not?
It's more about acknowledging that even facing adversity.
Yeah,
We can choose how we respond,
we can.
what actions we take.
Exactly. And to make this point, he uses a pretty extreme example.
What's that?
The story of Hiroo Onoda.
The Japanese soldier who kept fighting World War II for almost 30 years
Wait, what?
in the jungle.
After the war was over?
Yeah, he refused to surrender.
Wow.
He was following orders to never give up.
Even when everyone else had gone home.
It's a fascinating but kind of tragic story.
It is.
It highlights how much our beliefs shape our reality.
Even when those beliefs aren't accurate anymore.
Even that.
He was living in a world of his own making,
He was.
defined by a war that no longer existed.
Powerful stuff.
It is. It makes you think about, what was going on in his mind.
Yeah.
How he reconciled his reality with what was actually true.
It's a great example of cognitive dissonance,
Oh, yeah, where our beliefs clash with the evidence.
Exactly.
So we double down on our beliefs.
We do.
Even if it means ignoring the facts.
To protect our sense of reality.
Even if that reality is based on outdated information.
It happens all the time.
It's like people clinging to conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
refusing to acknowledge scientific evidence.
Right. Because it contradicts their beliefs.
Rather maintain their worldview than challenge their assumptions.
And this brings us back to Manson's point.
Which is?
We have a choice in how we interpret our experiences.
Okay.
What meaning we give them.
Even when things are tough.
Even then, we have the power to choose our response.
So this sounds empowering,
It is.
but also like a lot of responsibility.
It is both.
If we're in charge of our responses, even facing adversity,
Yeah.
does that mean saying no more often?
It might.
Setting boundaries?
That's exactly what Manson says.
He does.
He argues that setting boundaries is essential
Okay.
for both our well-being and healthy relationships.
But how do we actually do that?
How do we set boundaries without feeling guilty,
Yeah, or like we're letting people down?
especially in close relationships?
It can be hard to say no
It can.
without feeling like you're risking the connection.
Manson's point is that setting boundaries
Yeah.
isn't about being selfish.
Okay.
It's about respecting ourselves.
And recognizing our limits. It's communicating our needs assertively, even if it means difficult conversations.
Or temporary discomfort.
That's part of it.
So it's about the long-term health of the relationship.
Exactly.
Creating a dynamic where each person feels respected.
Yes,
Even if it means saying no sometimes.
it does.
To illustrate this, Manson uses Romeo and Juliet as an example.
As a cautionary example.
Okay, Romeo and Juliet, the epitome of romance.
I know, right?
An example of what not to do.
Exactly. How so? Because their relationship, though romanticized,
Yeah.
is actually super unhealthy.
Okay.
They're ruled by their emotions.
Okay.
Impulsive decisions, no boundaries.
And it leads to tragedy.
It does.
So it's a reminder that romantic love doesn't always equal healthy love.
It doesn't.
Sometimes the most passionate relationships are also the most destructive.
Especially without self-awareness.
Respect, boundaries.
All of that.
This leads to a big question then.
What's that? How do we know the difference between healthy and unhealthy love? How do we create relationships that are both passionate and sustainable?
Well, Manson argues that healthy love
Yeah.
is built on mutual respect,
Okay.
trust, shared values, and a willingness to support each other's growth.
Even if that means evolving in different directions.
Okay.
So not about clinging to each other
No,
or merging into one.
not at all.
It's about recognizing each person is an individual.
With their own needs, desires.
And the relationship allows space for that,
For all of that,
even as the couple grows together.
it's a delicate balance.
It is. It sounds like a dance.
It is a dance between connection and individuality,
Passion and respect.
supporting each other's dreams but honoring boundaries.
This all makes sense, but how do we actually put it into practice?
Easy,
No, it's easy to get swept up in the emotions
especially early on.
and lose sight of our boundaries.
That's where self-awareness comes in. And communicate
So checking in with ourselves,
regularly.
asking, what are my needs?
Am I honoring my own values?
Am I communicating clearly?
All of that.
So an ongoing process of self-reflection and communication, requiring honesty with ourselves and our partner.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
And this brings us back to one of Manson's key messages.
Which is,
Action precedes motivation.
he calls it the do something principle.
So don't wait for the perfect time or feeling.
Don't wait.
Just start doing something.
He calls those questions that keep us stuck VCR questions.
BCR questions.
Yeah, like how do I ask someone out?
Or how do I quit my job?
Exactly. Simple on the surface, But we overthink them.
And avoid taking action.
Because of fear or insecurity?
What's the answer then?
Manson says, just push the damn button.
You'll figure it out along the way.
You will?
Like, you don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step.
That's it.
And sometimes that first step is the hardest.
It is, but it's also the most important.
It breaks the inertia.
Gets us moving.
Even if we don't have all the answers.
Or feel totally prepared.
This reminds me of something else Manson talks about.
What's that?
Owning our reality.
Even the tough stuff.
Not blaming ourselves for everything,
Right.
but recognizing that we have a choice
Always.
in how we respond to things.
Even the most challenging circumstances.
So not dwelling on the past or assigning blame,
No.
focusing on the present moment,
And what we can control.
our thoughts, emotions, actions.
Exactly.
Instead of rumination or self-pity,
Yeah.
we take action
Even a small step
to move forward.
and create a better reality.
It's like that serenity prayer, right?
Oh, yeah.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change,
Courage to change the things I can.
and the wisdom to know the difference.
That's a perfect analogy.
It really captures what Manson's getting at.
What's that?
Taking responsibility for our lives doesn't mean controlling everything.
Or pretending bad things don't happen.
It's about recognizing we have a choice,
In how we respond.
and that even within our circumstances, we have agency.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Agency.
This is empowering, but I can't help but wonder,
What's that?
where do we find the energy to do all this?
That's a good question.
Life can be exhausting.
It's in.
Sometimes it feels like all we can do is get through the day.
I hear you.
Where's the energy for all this self-reflection and boundary setting?
Well, Manson says the key to finding that energy
Yeah.
lies in embracing the reality of our own mortality.
What?
Talking about death.
In a self-help book.
I know, right?
Seems counterintuitive.
It might sound morbid,
It kinda does.
but Manson's take is actually very liberating.
Oh, so?
He argues that once we accept we're all going to die someday,
Yeah.
we can start living more intentionally. We make choices that truly align with what we value.
Because our time is limited.
Exactly. It's precious and finite.
So it's not about being morbid or giving up on life,
No, not
but
at that.
recognizing that our time is limited.
And that makes each moment more precious.
Okay, I can see that.
He uses the analogy of travel.
Okay.
When you first start traveling, everything's exciting and new,
Yeah.
but as you visit more places, the novelty wears off.
You start to experience diminishing returns.
Right. You get caught up in logistics.
The planning, the been there, done that feeling.
Exactly.
I remember the thrill of my first trip abroad.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was so new and different.
I bet.
But after a while, it's easy to lose that sense of wonder.
That's where the depth over breadth principle comes in.
Depth over breadth.
Instead of chasing endless new experiences,
Yeah.
Manson suggests committing to a few things that really matter
Okay.
and exploring them deeply.
Like learning a new language fluently.
Yes.
Or mastering a craft.
Or building a lasting relationship.
It's about investing your energy in a way that creates meaning.
Not just fleeting excitement.
So it's not about being a tourist.
No.
It's about becoming a local. And that depth of experience is where we find the most joy.
That's what Manson argues.
This all comes back to values, doesn't it?
It does.
We need to figure out what matters to us
What we're willing to commit to.
before we can even think about depth. And remember those criteria for good values.
Grounded in reality, socially constructive.
And within our control.
Right, so not things like being rich or famous
Because those are driven by external validation.
and can easily become sources of anxiety.
Exactly.
Manson says good values should be things you can influence,
Through your own actions.
not things that depend on others.
This reminds me of that story about the soldier, Onoda.
Oh, yeah.
So committed to never surrendering
Yeah,
that he stayed hidden for decades.
even after the war was over.
A powerful example of how our values, even when misguided,
Yeah,
can shape our whole reality.
it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
It is.
We need to be careful about what we choose to give a fuck about.
Right.
But once we've chosen,
Yeah.
we need to commit fully
Even if it means going against the grain.
or facing tough challenges.
This all ties back to the problem-solving life.
It does.
Happiness isn't about avoiding problems.
Mm.
It's about choosing the right problems to solve
The ones that align with our values.
and help us grow.
Exactly.
So instead of asking, how can I avoid pain?
You should be asking
What pain am I willing to endure?
to live a meaningful life.
That choice, that commitment to certain values and challenges,
Yeah,
that's what defines our character.
it shapes our destiny
It separates a life of passive existence
from a life of active engagement.
And growth.
Beautifully put.
Manson also talks about owning our reality.
He does.
Even the tough stuff.
Yeah.
It's not about blaming ourselves,
Right.
but recognizing that we have a choice.
In how we respond.
Even to the most challenging circumstances.
Absolutely. He emphasizes that there's a difference between fault
Okay.
and responsibility.
What's the difference?
You might not be at fault for something bad happening,
Okay.
but you're always responsible for how you respond.
How you interpret that event, what actions you take.
That's it.
So it's not about dwelling on the past or assigning blame.
It's not.
It's about focusing on what we can control in this moment.
Our thoughts, our feelings, our actions.
Right, and that takes us back to that do something principle.
It does, doesn't it?
Manson seems to suggest that sometimes the best way to figure things out is to, well, just take action.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't have all the answers or feel totally motivated.
You got to start moving.
It's about breaking out of that cycle of just overthinking everything.
And sometimes just doing the damn thing.
Because that's where the real learning happens, right?
It is. It's in those moments.
Of action, experimentation.
Even failure.
That we gain insights and discover new paths forward.
Exactly.
And that willingness to act, to experiment, to even fail seems closely tied to that idea of being less wrong.
It is. It's not about always having the right answer.
More about constantly challenging your assumptions.
Refining your beliefs as you go.
Based on what you experience.
Exactly. Manson says we're all biased, right?
We are.
And prone to making mistakes.
Definitely.
But instead of trying to avoid being wrong altogether, we should kind of embrace the process of learning from those mistakes.
And trying to improve our understanding
of ourselves and the world.
It's about having a growth mindset.
It is.
That willingness to be wrong, to fail.
To learn and adapt.
Recognizing that life isn't about reaching some final destination.
It's not.
With perfect knowledge.
Or unwavering certainty.
It's more about the journey.
A constant process of learning and refinement.
Embracing the messy, unpredictable parts of life.
He does, doesn't he?
Even talks about setting boundaries in relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Which can be tough.
It can lead to rejection, conflict.
You know, it's funny. The title of the book,
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck,
might lead you to believe it's all about detachment and indifference.
Right.
But it seems like the opposite.
How so?
It's about caring deeply about what matters.
Okay.
And having the courage to set boundaries to protect those things.
You're right. It's about choosing what to care about.
Yeah.
Not about not caring at all.
And setting boundaries is a great example of that.
How so?
It's like saying, I care enough about this relationship to protect it.
By setting clear limits.
And expectations.
You got it.
So, not about building walls or pushing people away.
No.
It's about making a safe space for the relationship to thrive.
He actually uses Romeo and Juliet to illustrate this.
Romeo and Juliet.
He does. He highlights how that romanticized love is
But
actually really toxic.
And it leads to tragedy.
It does.
It's interesting because we think of Romeo and Juliet
as the ultimate love story.
Full of passion.
Yeah.
But when you really look at it,
what do you see?
It's full of impulsivity, bad communication, no boundaries.
It's more about obsession than healthy love.
Exactly.
And Manson uses this to challenge how we think about romantic love.
I said that.
We're often told that true love means sacrificing everything.
Merging into one.
Which can actually be really harmful.
It's like you lose yourself in the relationship.
You forget who you are.
Leading to codependency, resentment.
And eventually, the relationship falls apart.
So Manson's saying healthy love's different.
It is.
It's about respecting individuality, setting boundaries.
Allowing space for each person to grow.
So it's less about dependence.
Yeah.
More about interdependence.
Where each person feels supported and loved.
But also free to be themselves. And this goes back to owning our reality.
It does.
Taking responsibility for our own emotions and needs.
And communicating them clearly.
It's realizing we can't control our partner's feelings or actions.
But we can control how we respond.
Shifting from blame and reactivity
to empowerment and choice.
And that can make a huge difference in relationships.
A huge difference.
It all ties back to action over motivation, too.
In what way?
Manson says we often wait for the perfect moment to do something.
The perfect feel.
But action often has to come first.
You got to start moving to feel inspired.
Like those VCR questions.
Oh, was that?
Where the answer is obvious, but we overthink it.
And we avoid doing anything.
Out of fear or insecurity.
How do I quit my job I hate?
How do I ask someone out?
Classic VCR questions.
And what's the answer?
Just push the damn button.
Take action, even if it's scary.
See what happens.
You might be surprised.
You might be.
And even if it doesn't go perfectly,
You learn something.
It's all part of being less wrong, right?
It is that willingness to experiment, take risks.
Even fail.
It's all part of growth and self-discovery.
It's about getting comfortable with the unknown.
Stepping outside your comfort zone.
Shifting from fear.
To a growth mindset.
And that can be really liberating.
It can.
Which brings us to maybe the most profound theme in the book.
What's that?
Embracing our own mortality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a bit skeptical at first.
I can imagine.
How can thinking about death make life more enjoyable?
It seems counterintuitive.
It does, but Manson's approach is really interesting.
In what way?
He says that accepting that we're all going to die someday can actually free us from chasing empty goals.
Or seeking validation from others.
It helps us focus on what truly matters.
In the time we have.
So it's not about being morbid or giving up.
Right.
It's about using that awareness of our limited time.
To live more intentionally.
To appreciate each moment.
Because we never know how many we have left.
He actually tells a story about a young prince.
Oh, really?
Shielded from suffering and death.
Okay.
He's disillusioned with his life of privilege.
I see.
So he gives up his wealth and status.
To do what?
To seek enlightenment through hardship and poverty.
Wow, that's quite a story.
It is. It's like the story of the Buddha, isn't it?
It is. Born into luxury.
But finding enlightenment through a deeper understanding of suffering.
Exactly.
And the prince, like the Buddha, discovers that suffering without purpose is meaningless.
It doesn't lead to happiness.
So it's not about seeking out pain.
No.
But recognizing that certain kinds of pain,
the challenges we face, pursuing our values,
can lead to growth and resilience.
And a deeper appreciation for life.
That's interesting.
It is. Manson argues that accepting death,
our own mortality,
can be incredibly liberating.
Because
it frees us from those empty goals.
And needing validation from others, allowing us to focus on what really matters.
In the time we have left.
It's a good reminder to live in the present moment.
To appreciate the little things.
To make the most of each day.
Because we never know how many we have.
And he also emphasizes that facing our mortality can help us see ourselves as part of something bigger.
Something that goes beyond our individual lives.
It's not just about me and my happiness.
Right.
It's about contributing to something larger.
Our families, communities.
Even humanity as a whole.
Exactly. Manson says finding meaning often involves that.
Connecting to something beyond ourselves.
Something that gives us a sense of belonging.
And purpose.
In the grand scheme of things.
And that connection, that sense of belonging, can give us comfort and strength.
When facing life's challenges.
And help us find peace with our own mortality.
He tells another great story about Norio Suzuki.
Who's that?
This young adventurer obsessed with finding Hiru Onoda.
The soldier hiding in the jungle?
That's the one. Suzuki saw it as an adventure.
A chance to make history.
He actually finds Onoda after years of searching.
And convinces him to come out of hiding.
He does. It's a wild story.
It is.
But here's the thing.
What?
Onoda goes back to Japan. A hero.
Yeah.
But Suzuki, having achieved his goal, feels lost.
Really?
He dies a few years later in the Himalayas.
Still searching for that next big adventure.
It's a reminder to choose our adventures wisely.
Not just for the thrill of the chase,
but for the lasting meaning they bring to our lives.
True fulfillment comes from the journey itself.
The commitment to something bigger than ourselves.
And the connections we make along the way.
That's what matters.
So find joy in the present moment.
Appreciate the small things.
Cherish those relationships.
The things that truly endure.
After the thrill of any adventure is gone.
And Manson talks about how our values are kind of like immortality projects.
Immortality project.
The things we put our energy into, hoping to leave a legacy.
Make a difference even after we're gone. So not literal immortality.
No.
But creating something that outlasts our physical existence.
A work of art. A scientific discovery.
Even just the impact we have on others.
These immortality projects can give us purpose.
Meaning that goes beyond our lifespan.
It's about connecting to something bigger.
That gives our choices significance.
A sense of permanence.
Our lives aren't just about accumulating things.
Or achievement.
It's about contributing to the world.
Making it a little better, brighter, more meaningful.
And that contribution, that legacy.
Of love, kindness, positive impact.
It's the most enduring kind of immortality.
It is.
It's fascinating how Manson connects all these ideas.
What idea?
Choosing our values, facing our mortality, finding meaning.
Into this framework for a fulfilling life.
He's saying that by accepting our limitations.
The fact that we're all going to die.
We can unlock a deeper sense of purpose and freedom.
It's a paradox.
It's like that quote, He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man.
Oh, I like that.
So embrace life fully.
With all the ups and downs.
Knowing it's all temporary.
And that makes each moment precious.
This makes me wonder.
About what?
We often try to avoid pain and discomfort.
We do.
But what if embracing those experiences is actually essential?
For growth, for meaning.
Interesting thought.
Manson talks about a psychologist named Ernest Becker.
Okay.
Who had this theory about how our fear of death shapes us.
How so?
Becker argued that we create these immortality projects.
Careers, families, art.
To cope with the anxiety of knowing we'll die someday.
It's our attempt to leave a mark on the world.
To transcend our mortality.
Even if it's just symbolic.
It's not about denying death.
Or escaping it.
It's about finding meaning in the face of it.
Like, life is too short to...
Fill in the blank.
Whatever you're putting off out of fear or insecurity.
And that brings us back to Manson's message.
Of taking action, choosing what matters.
Committing fully.
Don't wait for the perfect moment.
Do the things that make you feel alive.
That contribute to something bigger.
Because, as Manson says, you're going to die someday.
So why not live a life that matters?
That's the question.
It's almost like that Spinoza quote, you know.
Which one?
Fear of death is the only thing that keeps a fool in line.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that we're all fools,
Right.
but that awareness of our own mortality, it can really push us.
Live better, yeah.
To live a life of purpose, meaning...
It's not about denying death or anything.
Right, it's about embracing it.
As a part of life.
A reality that can actually make us appreciate more what we have.
And inspire us to use our time well.
This makes me think about something else Manson talked about.
What's that?
How we create these stories about ourselves, about our lives.
Our own narrative.
Shaped by our values, experiences, our beliefs.
Like we're the authors of our own myths.
Yeah, exactly.
We choose the themes, the characters, the plot twists.
The things that give our lives meaning.
And sometimes those stories are really powerful.
They can help us overcome challenges.
Achieve our goals. Live better lives.
But I imagine those stories can also hold us back.
They can if they're based on, say, negative beliefs.
Things from the past that don't serve us anymore.
Exactly.
So Manson says we might need to rewrite those narratives.
To live more authentically.
It's not about denying the past.
Or pretending hard things didn't happen.
It's about reframing them.
In a way that helps us move on.
Can you give me an example of what you mean?
Sure. Imagine someone who grew up in poverty.
Okay.
They might believe they're not worthy of success.
Or that they'll always be struggling.
And that story can trap them, you know.
Keep them stuck.
But what if they change that story?
What if they focus on their resilience?
Their resourcefulness, their strength.
That new story could help them break free.
From those old beliefs, yeah.
Achieve their potential.
It's about realizing we choose the stories we tell ourselves.
By choosing better stories.
We can create a better reality.
This connects to that being less wrong idea again.
It does.
Always questioning, being open to new perspectives.
Refining your beliefs as you go.
Manson says growth is an ongoing process.
It is.
It's not about finding the right answer.
You know, or reaching some perfect state of knowing everything.
It's about being willing to learn.
From your mistakes, yeah.
Adapt to new situations. Keep growing.
And that often means discomfort.
It does.
You have to confront those old beliefs.
The ones that aren't helpful anymore.
That can be really tough.
It can. Growth rarely happens when we're comfortable.
It doesn't.
It means stepping outside familiar patterns.
Challenging yourself.
Embracing the unknown.
And sometimes you make mistakes.
You fail, your beliefs get challenged. But even though it's uncomfortable,
it's a chance to learn.
To grow from those experiences.
Manson says we should embrace failure.
Not fear it.
See it as valuable feedback.
It helps you adjust, learn new skills.
Become more resilient.
Like they say, the only way to avoid mistakes is to do nothing.
Exactly. And that's not much of a life.
So be bold, take risks.
Experiment. Put yourself out there.
Even if you fail sometimes.
Because you might discover something new.
Hidden strengths, opportunities.
A deeper understanding of yourself.
It's not a setback, it's a stepping stone.
To growth and self-discovery.
Which takes us to another important point.
What's that?
Owning our choices and the consequences that come with them.
Taking responsibility.
Yeah, like that story Manson tells.
That story.
About being falsely accused of having drugs at school.
Oh, right, when he was young.
It was really traumatic for him.
It was.
But he realized that even though it wasn't his fault,
yeah,
he could choose how he responded.
What meaning he gave to that event. That's powerful.
It is. It's about taking back your power.
Even when things are bad.
Not blaming yourself or denying the pain.
But seeing that you have a choice
in how you react, how you move forward.
It's a shift in mindset.
From feeling like a victim
to feeling like a creator.
Recognizing you have agency.
Even in tough situations.
And that agency is so freeing.
It is.
It helps you move on with purpose.
Create a better reality for yourself.
So it's not just about what happens.
It's about how you respond to it.
The meaning you give it, the actions you take.
That's what shapes your experience.
And this goes back to boundaries, too.
It does. Setting boundaries is about recognizing
that you have a right to protect yourself.
Your time, your energy, your well-being.
And that's hard sometimes.
It is, especially if you're a people pleaser.
Or afraid of rejection or conflict.
But Manson says setting boundaries is not selfish.
It's self-respect.
Knowing your limits, communicating your needs.
Putting yourself first.
Yeah.
And you can't control how other people react.
You can't. They might not like your boundaries.
They might be upset, angry.
But it's not your job to manage their feelings.
Exactly. You can't pour from an empty cup.
You have to take care of yourself first.
To show up in your relationships and in the world. And that means setting those boundaries.
Even when it's hard.
Because sometimes saying no
is the kindest thing you can do.
For yourself and for others.
It helps you build healthier relationships.
And live a life that reflects your values. This deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck has been a journey.
It has.
Manson's so honest, it makes you think.
He doesn't shy away from the hard parts of life.
But he also gives us hope.
He reminds us that we have choices.
In how we see the world, how we react to things.
What we choose to leave behind.
It's not about being perfectly happy or avoiding all pain.
It's about embracing life, all of it.
The good and the bad, the messy, the complicated.
Choosing your values, committing to what matters.
Living each day with purpose and courage.
And yeah, not giving a feck about the stuff that doesn't.
So as we wrap up, we leave you with some questions.
What are they?
What stories are you telling yourself?
What are you willing to give a fuck about?
What legacy will you leave?
The answers are inside you.
Keep asking, keep exploring, keep diving deep.
Happy diving, everyone!
Until next time.